Hey friends, welcome back once again. In this session, we will study spinal cord and revise its concept. And I am using MedNotes to do so. Okay, so you can also download MedNotes. It's a great app to revise and take notes. So let's get started. Spinal cord. Spinal cord. Spinal cord lie loosely in the vertebral column. It extends from foramen magnum, where it is continuous with the medulla oblongata, covered with seats called meninges, dura mater, pia mater, and arachnoid mater. Cylindrical in shape, length 45 centimeters in male and 43 centimeters in female. Two spindle-shaped swellings, namely cervical and lumbar enlargements. Cone-shaped termination called conus medullaris. Non-nervous filaments called phylum terminale extends from conus medullaris downwards to the fundus of the dural sac at the level of second sacral vertebra S2. So spinal cords, there are 31 spinal segments or nerve or pair. So here I am going to write like a C8, T12, L5, S5, and C1. Cervical 8, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 5, and coccyx 1. Okay. So here as you can see, cervical 8, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 5, and coccyx 1. So total 31 nerve pair. Segments correspond to 31 pairs of spinal nerves in a symmetric manner. Each spinal nerve is formed by anterior or ventral root and a posterior dorsal root. Both the roots on either side leave the spinal cord and passes through the corresponding intervertebral foramina. And one concept is there like uh, if as we know that vertebral columns but vertebral and spinal like here if it is C1 C2 like C7 and here you get C8. So here you will get C1, okay, and here you will get C2 of this one C8. Each spinal nerve is formed by an anterior ventral root and a posterior dorsal root. Both the roots on either side leave the spinal cord and passes through the corresponding intervertebral foramina. The first cervical spine nerve passes through foramina between occipital bone and attalus, and this is the bone where you say yes. At occipital and occipito-atlantic junction you say yes. Okay. Bundle of descending roots surrounding the final terminate resemble a tail of horse, thus called cauda equina. Anterior surface of spinal cord, deep furrow, anterior median fissure. Depth of this fissure is about 3 mm. Lateral to anterior median fissure, slight depression, anterolateral sulcus. It denotes the exit of anterior nerve root. On posterior aspect there is a depression, posterior median sulcus. It extends inside the spinal cord for 5 mm. Lateral to the posterior intermediate sulcus is the posterolateral sulcus. This denotes the entry of posterior nerve root. Posterior median sulcus, posterior white funiculus, lateral white funiculus, posterior gray commissure, anterior gray commissure, anterior white commissure, anterior white funiculus, anterior median fissure, anterolateral sulcus, spinal canal, anterior gray horn, lateral gray horn, posterior gray horn, posterolateral sulcus, postero-intermediate sulcus, and posterior median septum. Internal structure of spinal cord. Neural substance of spinal cord is divided into gray matter and outer white matter. Like this is accpet, so what? This is white and this is gray. Okay. Gray matter of the spinal cord is the collection of nerve fiber bodies, dendrites, and parts of the axon. It is placed centrally in the form of wing of butterfly. Gray matter contains two types of multipolar neurons, Golgi type 1 neurons, and I have told this about this in my previous lecture of neuroanatomy. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. Golgi type 1 neuron have long axons which are usually found in anterior horn. Golgi type 1 neuron. Okay. And Golgi type 2 neurons, short axons found in posterior horn. Organization of neurons in gray matter of spinal cord is described in two methods, nuclei or columns and lamina or layers. White matter of spinal cord surrounds the gray matter. It is found by the bundle of both myelinated and non-myelinated fibers, but predominantly the myelinated fibers. So here you can see lamina 1, marginal nucleus, lamina 2, substantia gelatinosa of Rolando, lamina 3 denotes chief sensory nucleus, lamina 4, Clark's nucleus, lamina 5, intermedio lateral nucleus, lamina 6, Ranso cell, lamina 7, alpha motor neuron, gamma motor neuron, lamina 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 7, Ranso cell, alpha motor neuron, gamma motor neuron, lamina 8 here, and ninth lamina, and lamina 10 is in center. Okay. Internucleal neurons. White matter White matter of the spinal cord surrounds the gray matter. It is formed by the bundles of both myelinated and non-myelinated fibers, but predominantly the myelinated fibers. Each half of white matter is divided by the fibers of anterior and posterior nerve roots into three white columns or funiculus: anterior or ventral white column, lateral white column, and posterior or dorsal white column. Anterior or ventral white column, lateral white column, and posterior or dorsal white column. And I have make a trick: dorsal, afferent, and sensory, efferent, ventral, and motor. Tracts of a spinal cord. This is very important. Ascended tracts of a spinal cord: anterior white column, anterior spinothalamic tract, origin chief sensory nucleus, course crossing in spinal cord forms spinal lemniscus, termination ventral posterolateral nucleus of thalamus, crude touch sensation. And what is it is for? Anterior white columns, anterior spinothalamic tract, crude touch sensation, lateral spinothalamic tract, substantia gelatinosa, crossing in spinal cord form spinal lemniscus, ventral posterolateral nucleus of thalamus, pain and temperature sensation, lateral spinothalamic tract, ventral spinocerebellar tract, marginal nucleus crossing in spinal cord, anterior lobe of cerebellum, subconscious kinesthetic sensation. Dorsal spinocerebellar tract, Clark's nucleus, uncrossed fibers, anterior lobe of cerebellum, subconscious kinesthetic sensations, lateral white column, spino- spinotactile tract, chief sensory nucleus, crossing in spinal cord, superior colliculus, termination and spino-visual reflex, fasciculus dorsolaterales, posterior nerve root ganglion, components of lateral spinothalamic tract, substantia gelatinosa, pain and temperature sensation, spinoreticular tract, intermediolateral cells, crossed and uncrossed fibers, reticular formation of brain stem, consciousness and awareness, spinoreticular tract, spino-olivary tract, non-specific uncrossed fiber, olivary nucleus and proprioception, spino-vestibular tract, non-specific crossed and uncrossed fiber, lateral vestibular nucleus, proprioception, posterior white column, fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, posterior nerve root ganglion, posterior root nerve ganglion, uncrossed fiber, no synapse in spinal cord, uncrossed fiber, no synapse in spinal cord, nucleus gracilis in medulla, nucleus cuneatus in medulla, tactile sensation, tactile localization, tactile discrimination, vibratory sensation, conscious kinesthetic sensation, stereognosis, stereognosis and tactile sensations. Descending termination, fibers of all the tract terminate in motor neurons situated in the anterior gray horn of the spinal cord. And now we will revise the descending tracts. Okay, descending tracts. Anterior, firstly, when any fibers come from the cortex to the spinal cord, cortex to the spinal cord, then this is the descending pathway. Okay, so we will study about them right now. Anterior corticospinal tract, anterior white column, blood cells and other cells of motor nucleus, uncrossed fibers, control of voluntary movements, forms upper motor neurons, um lesion, positive Babinski sign, and the face, like when this these fibers, when these fibers are affected, then contralateral lower half of the face is affected in UMN lesion. Lateral corticospinal tract, lateral corticospinal tract, lateral white column, birth cells and other cells of motor area, crossed fibers, forms upper motor neuron, control voluntary movement and upper motor neurons. Median longitudinal fasciculus, anterior white column, vestibular nucleus, reticular formation, superior colliculars and cells of Kajal. Uncrossed fibers extends up to the upper cervical segments, coordination of reflex ocular movements, integration of movements of eyes and neck, reflex ocular movement, anterior vestibulospinal tract, anterior white column, medial vestibular nucleus, uncrossed fiber extends up to the upper thoracic segments, maintenance of muscle tone and posture, anterior vestibulospinal tract, maintenance of position of head and body during acceleration, lateral vestibulospinal tract, lateral white column, lateral vestibular nucleus, mostly uncrossed, extends to all segments, maintenance of postures of head and body during acceleration, maintenance of muscle tone and posture. Reticulospinal tract, lateral white funiculus, Reticular formation of pons and medulla, mostly uncrossed, extends up to the thoracic segment. Coordination of the voluntary and reflex movements, control of muscle tone, control of respiration, diameter of blood vessels. Reticular spinal tract. Tectospinal tract, anterior white column, superior colliculus, crossed fibers extends up to the lower cervical segments. Control of movements of head in response to visual or auditory impulses. When I am speaking from here, then your eyes will move towards the sound. So this is controlled by the tectospinal tract. Okay. And rubrospinal tract, the red nucleus, rubro means red, rubrospinal tract, lateral white column, red nucleus, crossed fiber extends up to the thoracic segment, facilitate influence or flexor muscle tone, positive to the flexors and negative for the extensors. Okay, and now comes olivospinal tract, lateral white column, inferior olivary nucleus, mostly crossed, extends not clear. Control of movements due to proprioception. So this was all about our descending tract of spinal cord. Now, effects of hemisection, Brown-Sequard syndrome of spinal cord. Sensory changes, same side and opposite side. Sensation loss, sensation carried by uncrossed tract, fine touch. 1 minute. These all are the very important topics. Sensation are carried by uncrossed fiber, fine touch, tactile localization, tactile discrimination, vibratory sense, conscious kinesthetic sensation, stereognosis, sensation retained, sensation carried by crossed tracts, crude touch, pain, and temperature, below level of of lesion. Motor changes, motor upper motor neuron lesion type, increased tone, spastic paralysis, loss of superficial reflex, aggregated aggregation of deep reflexes, Babinski sign, positive Babinski sign, rigidity in the limbs, no muscular vestige. Motor changes and opposite. This was of same side and this is of opposite sign. Sensory changes, sensation loss, sensation carried out by crude touch, pain, and temperature, sensation retained, sensation carried by uncrossed tracts, fine touch, tactile localization, tactile discrimination, vibratory sense, conscious kinesthetic sensation, stereognosis. No paralysis if it occurs very mild, resemble upper motor neuron lesion type. And at the level of lesion, what happens is complete anesthesia, lower motor neuron lesion type, loss of muscle tone, flaccid paralysis, loss of all reflexes, wastage of muscle, loss of vasomotor reflexes. Sensation loss, sensation carried out by crossed tracks, crude touch, pain, and temperature. Sensation retained, sensation carried out by uncrossed tracks, fine touch, tactile localization, tactile discrimination, vibratory sense, conscious kinesthetic sensation, stereognosis. No paralysis if it occurs very mild, resembles lower motor neuron lesion type. So what we get from here is like LMN lesion, Babinski sign. Babinski sign is negative and flaccid paralysis. Okay, and what we get in UMN lesion is UMN lesion is Babinski sign is positive and spastic paralysis. Okay, here you can see Babinski sign is positive and spastic paralysis. Spastic paralysis and Babinski sign positive in UMN lesion. upper motor neuron lesion, and in lower motor neuron lesion, flaccid paralysis and loss of all reflexes, and Babinski sign is negative. And on in LMN lesion, like LMN lesion, if this is your face, then what happens is the ipsilateral loss of the half of the face.